What if I told you that the most compelling evidence for alternate dimensions didn't actually come from some multi-billion-dollar particle accelerator in Switzerland, but from, like, an Apple Vision Pro camera pointed at a blank wall by a guy on DMT?
I mean, it completely shatters how we categorize reality,
Hmm.
right? We really like our science to be strictly mechanical and, our spirituality to be strictly ethereal.
Exactly. Like when you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor points to it. It's comforting because it's binary.
Yeah, it's right there in front of you.
But then you step into the world of subtle energies, neurodevelopment, the astral plane, and suddenly that x-ray machine is just broken. The whole diagnostic landscape becomes entirely murky.
Right, totally murky.
But today, we are taking a deep dive into an incredibly dense, fascinating source that claims to have actually fixed the machine. We are looking at a speculative inquiry by a master bioenergy healer who goes by the name Osman the Blind Yogi.
And to really grasp the magnitude of what Osman is presenting in these materials, we have to understand his core philosophical framework, because this is definitely not your standard watered-down modern wellness retreat rhetoric.
No, not at all. It is highly structured. In fact, to set the stage for you, we have to look at the foundational quote that defines his entire platform. It's a really bold claim.
Oh, absolutely.
He says, and I'm quoting him directly here, "Welcome to a space where 50 years of ancient mastery meets 21st century practicality. I am Osman, the blind yogi, and I have spent 5 decades refining, testing, and simplifying the world's most powerful spiritual and wellness technologies. Today, I am giving away my entire life's work strategies that clients worldwide pay millions of dollars to access, completely free. No gatekeeping, no premium paywalls, and no required initiations. Just pure, fast-acting transformation that you can self-initiate from the comfort of your home starting today."
I mean, that is just one heck of an opening pitch.
Right. It's an irresistible offer.
It really is.
Yeah.
But it's built on four very specific structural pillars that we need to unpack.
Hmm.
What's fascinating here is that he's anchored this entire methodology in what he calls a global synthesis and absolute simplification.
Let's start with that synthesis, actually. Because when he says 50 years of ancient mastery, he is not speaking metaphorically
Not at all.
here.
I mean, Osman is drawing on 5 decades of relentless, continuous practice. In the source material, he details a lifestyle that demanded up to 18 hours a day of dedicated work in his youth.
18 hours a day.
Yeah, 18 hours. He actually mentions achieving his first state of samadhi, which is, this incredibly profound state of complete meditative absorption by the time he was 19 years old.
Wow. Most 19-year-olds are just trying to figure out how to do their laundry, and he's hitting the absolute pinnacle of yogic concentration.
Exactly. And over those 50 years, he didn't just stay in one lane either. He synthesized disciplines from the Far East, the Middle East, and critically, Western scientific frameworks.
Right, which makes it super unique.
Yeah, and he has tested these methods on students from over 100 different countries. So what you are looking at is a cross-cultural, highly optimized formula. It's basically a living, breathing methodology that has been stress-tested across the globe.
And that leads perfectly into the second pillar, which is absolute simplification. Because usually when you dip your toes into these ancient sciences, there are massive barriers to entry.
Oh, massive.
You have to be initiated by a specific guru. You have to memorize ancient dialects or isolate yourself in a monastery. The gatekeeping is just intense.
The esoteric world historically loves its barriers, right? But Osman's entire mission is to do the exact opposite of that. He is deconstructing these massive, intimidating spiritual milestones into structured, incredibly accessible paths.
And he does this largely by utilizing precise mathematical ratios, right, from that ancient text.
Yes, exactly. It's from an ancient text called the Tirumandaram, written by Sage Tirumula.
Right. The notes specifically call out verses 568 and 572. But wait, let's just translate this for a second. What does a verse from a centuries-old poetic text have to do with, like, respiratory math?
Well, that's the brilliance of ancient esoteric texts. They weren't just poetry. I mean, they were often coded biological manuals.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Those specific verses contain precise mathematical counts for inhalation, retention, and exhalation. Osman has extracted that math and created an accessible 4-step breathwork progression.
So it's essentially the ancient precursor to modern box breathing, like what Navy SEALs used to calm their nervous systems, but just dialed up to 11.
Exactly. But the goal isn't just to lower your heart rate. The goal of this specific math is the systematic cleansing of the 114 chakras and the 72,000 nadis, which are the subtle energy channels in the body.
Okay, wow.
He argues this specific mathematical breathwork allows practitioners to safely achieve rapid spiritual development and self-generated kundalini awakening, completely bypassing the historical dangers of blocked energy that usually require a guru to fix.
So he's taking the unimaginably complex and turning it into an open source at-home protocol. Which, brings us to the biographical reality of our subject, which shapes this entire deep dive.
Right, the fact that he's blind.
Exactly. Osman is the blind yogi. He has been permanently blind since May 2023. But because he had normal eyesight for the vast majority of his life prior to that, he retains vivid visual memories. He has a massive sighted sensory frame of reference.
And that is a crucial lens for you to keep in mind as we navigate this material. When Osman describes subtle energies or interdimensional entities or astral environments, he is describing them with the exact precision of a sighted person.
Right, he can contextualize it.
Exactly. He's taking his past visual knowledge and mapping it directly onto his current internal energetic perception.
He's translating the invisible into a visual language that we, the sighted audience, can actually process. And that perfectly sets up our mission for today.
Yeah, it really does.
We are going to explore how Osman bridges this ancient esotericism with cutting-edge modern science. How does someone who is physically blind see the internal biological universe? And then, what happens when that highly tuned internal perception collides with external modern hardware?
Oh, it gets wild.
We are talking quantum healing, DMT experiments caught on camera, UFO holograms, and even the strict ballistics of a .357 Magnum.
It is a wild, expansive trajectory, but there is a profound logical through line connecting all of it. Osman is operating on what he calls the scientific paradigm. For him, a 90% success rate in healing isn't magic. Spirituality isn't magic. It is just a physics we haven't mapped yet.
So let's start mapping it. Let's look at the baseline framework of the human biofield. To understand how he perceives reality, we have to completely redefine the human nervous system.
You really do.
Osman points us to a landmark book from 1918 by Arthur Avalon, which is actually the pen name of Sir John Woodruff, a British judge in India. The book is called Serpent Power.
Serpent Power is arguably the definitive text that brought Eastern esoteric anatomy to the West. And this is where Osman completely challenges the standard pop culture understanding of our energetic bodies.
Right, the stuff you see everywhere.
Exactly. Most people in the West, if they've gone to a yoga class or visited a New Age store, they know about the 7 main chakras: root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, crown. 7 neat little spinning wheels of colored light.
Right, you buy a chakra bracelet on Etsy with 7 little colored beads, you burn some sage, and you think you've completely mapped your soul.
Exactly. It's heavily commodified.
Yeah.
But Osman, referencing Avalon's deep dive into the original Sanskrit, explains that there aren't just 7. There are 114 chakras.
114.
Yes, the famous 7 are just the major interstate hubs. Between the root and the heart chakra alone, there are about 20 minor chakras. And here's where the scientific paradigm kicks in.
Okay, I'm listening.
These aren't just mystical metaphors floating outside the body. They are intricately mapped to the physical Western nervous system.
Okay, I have to push back here because 114 chakras and 72,000 nadis, these energy channels, they just sound overwhelmingly complex to keep track of. Are we saying that the physical nervous system, with its literal nerves, synapses, and electrical pulses, is just a dense, fleshy shadow of this massive energetic superhighway?
That is precisely the framework Osman is presenting.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at an esoteric text that says the root chakra sits at the base of the spine, and then you look at a Western anatomical chart, what do you find there? A major nerve plexus.
Wow. Okay.
The sacral chakra, another massive nerve plexus, the solar plexus. The medical name itself literally gives it away. It's a complex, dense network of radiating nerves right in the pit of the stomach.
So the ancient subtle energy maps were essentially just early neurology.
You could absolutely argue that. The physical body is the gross, tangible manifestation of the subtle biofield. And because Osman is blind, his internal sensory awareness of this biology has become hyperacute.
He's incredibly tuned in.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He experiences this neurology in real time. He describes the 2 main nadis, the Ida and the Pingala. These run along the left and right sides of the spinal column, wrapping around it from the base all the way up to the medulla oblongata at the base of the skull.
And he directly correlates these to our autonomic nervous system, correct? Like the systems that run our bodies without us having to actually think about it.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
The left channel, the Ida nadi, corresponds to the parasympathetic nervous system. In conventional medicine, we call this the rest and digest function. It slows the heart, conserves energy, and promotes healing.
Okay. And the right side?
The right channel, the Pingala Nadi, corresponds to the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight-or-flight function. It accelerates the heart rate, dumps adrenaline, and prepares the body for action.
And here is where we get back to that fascinating visual translation we talked about in his biography. Osman doesn't just conceptualize these nervous systems intellectually. He literally sees them in his mind's eye.
Right, because of his visual memory.
Exactly. According to ancient sciences, each day is globally dominated by either the Ida or the Pingala energy. For Osman, when he wakes up on a parasympathetic Ida-dominant day, his entire internal field of vision, despite being physically blind, is covered in a grayish-blue hue. It's almost like looking at a blank movie screen.
And on the alternate days, the sympathetic Pingala-dominant days, that internal screen shifts to a light pinkish-red hue. He instantly knows the energetic atmospheric condition of the planet for that day just by the color dominating his internal vision.
That is wild. But it's not just atmospheric colors. It's a profound, almost startling physical sensation of his own internal organs. This part of the source material had me completely stuck.
Oh, it's mind-blowing.
Think about your average day. Unless you are terrified or you just sprinted up 3 flights of stairs, you probably can't even feel your own heart beating in your chest.
Yeah, we are entirely numb to our baseline biology.
Exactly. But Osman feels his heart pumping 24/7. If he wants to check his heart rate, he doesn't need an Apple Watch. He just tunes in and counts the beats he feels vibrating in his chest.
And it goes way deeper than the heart.
Right. He can literally feel his pancreas working. He feels his liver processing toxins. He can feel his bile duct secreting.
We really need to pause and consider the implications of that level of awareness. I mean, modern humans are chronically distracted. We are bombarded by external stimuli, blue light, constant notifications, ambient noise, chronic psychological stress.
We're constantly hijacked.
We really are. We have entirely tuned out the internal orchestra of our own biology. We don't notice a problem until a vital organ is literally screaming in pain. Osman's premise is that by optimizing the biofield through his structured breathwork protocols, you strip away that numbness, you regain this profound biological sensitivity.
And the absolute pinnacle of this internal sensitivity is his experience of the Kundalini energy. Now, in popular culture, Kundalini awakenings are often described as these terrifying, explosive, reality-breaking events.
Right, people talk about them like they're psychotic breaks.
Exactly. But Osman explicitly debunked that. He says that when you use a structured, systematic approach, like the Tirumandam math, it isn't violent. For him, in its default awakened state, it feels like a subtle, warm wave.
He uses a really brilliant analogy for it.
Yeah, he compares it to someone touching your skin with a very soft feather, just tracing a warm, tingling line all the way up the central channel of your spine, right up into the brain.
And it isn't purely physical either. Sometimes he hears it, not as tinnitus, which is a symptom of hearing damage, but as an energetic frequency. He describes it sometimes as a distinct buzzing noise, and other times it sounds almost exactly like crickets chirping in his inner ear.
This internal biological mastery is the bedrock of his clinical specialization. And we have to talk about the clinical side, because this is where the numbers get incredibly real.
They really do.
Osman operates professionally as a master bioenergy healer, but he doesn't do general wellness checks. He specializes strictly in critical care, recovery, and terminal illnesses. And his fees completely reflect that. He charges elite clients $10 million for terminal illness recovery and $1 million for critical care.
Those numbers are definitely designed to shock people.
Yeah.
But they firmly establish his positioning in the market. I mean, he is operating at the absolute apex of this field, dealing with cases where conventional medicine has often just run out of options.
Okay, I have a massive red flag here. I have to play devil's advocate because whenever you hear about a spiritual healer charging $10 million to cure a terminal illness, the immediate rational response is, wait, is this elite spiritual grifting? How is he possibly justifying a $10 million invoice for something invisible?
It is a completely fair question, and it's exactly why we have to look at the mechanics he claims to employ. He isn't just sitting in a room thinking good thoughts. He states that he uses the principles of quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement to perform remote energy transfers.
Let's break that down, because quantum entanglement is a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. In physics, it's what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, the idea that two particles can become linked, so that if you change the state of one particle here, the other particle instantly changes state, even if it's a million miles away, faster than the speed of light.
Precisely. And Osman argues that this physics absolutely applies to the human biofield. If everything is ultimately composed of energy and information at a subatomic level, then consciousness and biological energy can be entangled.
Let me try an original analogy here to see if I grasp this. It sounds like he's treating the universe like a giant cloud network.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So if I have a local app on my phone in New York and it's acting corrupted, a developer in Tokyo can push a clean line of code to the cloud server via an API. The server instantly updates the app on my phone. No physical cables connect the developer in Tokyo to my phone in New York, but the system is entangled through the network. Osman is saying he acts as the developer, pushing vital energetic code to a patient's biofield, regardless of physical distance.
That is an excellent analogy. He establishes a connection by focusing his highly trained mind on the patient, locking onto their energetic signature, and he literally transfers his own cultivated vital energy.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It is. He explicitly notes that this physical transfer profoundly drains him. It takes a massive toll on his own biobattery. But the patient, who is critically depleted, experiences instantaneous shifts in their energy, which then jumpstarts their physical healing trajectory.
And just to prove that he isn't merely preying on desperate billionaires, he provides a fascinating counterexample in the source material. He recently ran a promotion for a $5 anxiety fix. $5. That is less than the price of a latte.
Right.
He essentially told people, gather your whole office together, pay $5 each, and I will do a 5-minute remote energy fix for anxiety. You tell me if it's just a placebo.
But the psychology behind the $5 is crucial here. Why not just do it for free if it's a demonstration?
Well, Osman points out a fundamental truth he learned in business. If you give something away for absolutely nothing, people do not respect the energetic exchange. They treat it as worthless.
The $5 is just a psychological token of commitment. You have to have skin in the game for your brain to accept the transfer. But, if you want the ultimate undeniable real-world proof of his biofield optimization, you don't look at his clients. You look at his own survival story.
This part is incredible.
During the height of the COVID pandemic, Osman contracted a very severe variant of the virus. He was hospitalized for 6 straight months. 6 months in a critical care hospital ward is a grueling ordeal for any human body.
And here's the statistic that absolutely stopped me in my tracks. He notes that in his specific ward, there were 20 patients dealing with this severe variant. 19 of them died. Osman was the sole survivor in that room.
A 95% mortality rate around him, and he walked out.
How does he explain that medically?
He attributes his survival entirely to his structural protocols. His decades of breath work and energetic dedication had organically boosted his immune function. I mean, when we get stressed or sick, our internal biobattery depletes, leaving the immune system with no power to fight.
Right, your reserves are just gone.
Exactly. But Osman's internal biobattery, his natural energy reserves, were so robust, so fundamentally overcharged from 50 years of practice, that it gave his physical immune system the decisive edge it needed to combat a lethal novel virus. He didn't use magic. He just gave his biology premium fuel.
Okay, so let's summarize where we are. We have established that Osman has this profound, stress-tested mastery over the internal, subtle biology of the human form. He perceives the energy channels as colors. He feels the minute functions of his organs. He uses quantum entanglement for remote healing. And he has the biological resilience to survive a 95% mortality scenario.
Right.
But here is where the deep dive takes a massive pivot. If his premise is correct, that this is all just unmapped physics, what happens when modern technology finally evolves enough to detect those physics?
This is exactly where Osman's speculative inquiry gets incredibly compelling. He starts observing how modern hardware, specifically high-resolution cameras, artificial intelligence, and audio transcription, is beginning to awkwardly bump into the subtle realms that yogis have been navigating internally for thousands of years.
He arrives at this observation by doing what we all do listening to podcasts. In the material, he explicitly references listening to a Joe Rogan Experience episode where Rogan was interviewing a woman named Diana who holds a PhD in spirituality and studies UFOs and interdimensional entities.
And Osman's observation of this interview perfectly highlights the difference between human subtle energy and machine capability. If you read the AI-generated transcript of that interview, it just looks like a standard Q&A. Rogan was drilling this PhD, asking for hard, direct evidence of UFOs, and gently pushing back on her reliance on dreams and indirect accounts. The text seems completely benign.
But Osman, listening to the audio while physically blind, tuned into the energetic frequency of the conversation. He didn't just hear the words. He could literally feel Diana's emotion bleeding through the audio.
It's that hypersensitivity again.
Yeah. He felt her shame. He felt her intense nervousness. He felt the crushing pressure she experienced feeling interrogated by Rogan, even though Rogan was keeping his voice totally calm and level.
He brings this up to draw a very sharp, necessary contrast with artificial intelligence.
Oh.
AI can parse the syntax, it can transcribe the words flawlessly, it can even analyze the tone of voice, but it cannot feel human emotion. It entirely lacks the subtle biofield required for true empathy.
AI has no Ida or Pingala. It has no chakras, so it's blind to the emotional weight. But while AI might lack an energetic soul, modern camera lenses are a different story. They are starting to capture visual spectrums that our biological eyes completely filter out.
And this brings us to an incredible story.
Yes, the one Osman references from the Sean Ryan show, featuring a guest named Danny Galla.
The Danny Galla experiments are where the collision of chemistry and hardware truly happens. Galla engages in what he calls psychonautical experiments. Specifically, he and his subjects are administering DMT intravenously for remarkably long periods, like 4 to 5 hours at a time, under strict medical monitoring.
Let's do a quick translation for the listener here. DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, is a wildly powerful psychedelic compound. It's often called the spirit molecule. Usually, if you smoke it, the trip lasts like 15 minutes, and people report blasting out of their bodies and meeting hyperdimensional entities. But Galla is using an IV drip to keep them in that peak state for hours.
Exactly. It's an unprecedented method for sustained exploration of altered states of consciousness.
So during these extended chemically induced states, Danny Galla runs a very specific controlled experiment. He shines a standard red laser pointer, just a single red beam of light, onto a blank white wall in the room. And at the exact point where the laser hits the wall, the subjects consistently report seeing ancient, unrecognizable alphabets floating in the red light.
And we have to highlight the scientific rigor Galla tried to maintain here. He didn't lead the witnesses. When a news subject went under, he didn't say, hey, stare at the laser and tell me if you see alien letters. He would ask them open-ended questions. Are you seeing a rabbit? An elephant? What's on the wall?
Right, trying to avoid any bias.
Yes. And independently, subject after subject would say, no, I'm seeing ancient text. They verified the exact same visual phenomenon without prior knowledge. They described the alphabets as resembling Japanese kanji or Hebrew, but from a language no one could actually decipher. Sometimes the text seemed to convey synchronized, almost numerical instructions.
Now, in the realm of psychology, a shared hallucination is fascinating, but it is still easily dismissed as a chemical quirk of the human brain reacting to the same stimulus.
Sure, it could just be a brain glitch.
But here is the absolute aha moment of the entire deep dive. The moment that breaks the scientific paradigm wide open. They decided to point an Apple Vision Pro camera, or a high-end Apple iPhone Pro Max camera. Osman isn't entirely sure of the exact model, but it was top-tier modern Apple optics. They pointed it at the red laser beam on the wall while the subjects were in the room under DMT, and the camera actually caught the alphabets on video.
We really need to let the weight of that sink in. A mechanical lens paired with a silicon graphics processor captured objective visual evidence of a phenomenon that was supposed to be happening entirely inside the chemically altered subjective minds of the participants.
I mean, how is that physically possible? Explain to me the literal physics of how a glass lens catches a hallucination.
We have to rethink the word hallucination. What if it's not a projection of the mind, but a detection of an existing frequency? The biological human eye is notoriously limited. We only see a minuscule sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum, what we call visible light. We can't see infrared, we can't see ultraviolet, we can't see radio waves. But a high-end modern camera sensor doesn't have those biological limits. It can be engineered to capture a significantly wider band of the light spectrum.
Osman actually goes on a tangent about this to back it up. He talks about how 20 years ago when he was living in Dubai, his graphic designer friends refused to use anything but Mac computers. They insisted the graphics cards and visual resolution were unmatched for capturing the absolute finest details of the light and color spectrum.
Right, the tech was just superior for that.
Osman is arguing that modern consumer technology, especially Apple's optic sensors, has reached a resolution threshold so high that it is inadvertently beginning to capture the subtle, higher frequencies of the astral or alternate dimensions.
And he scales this exact theory up to address one of the most controversial topics on the planet, the UFO phenomenon. Osman recounts an incident from his past when he was managing a site for a major pharmaceutical company.
And if you know anything about big pharma manufacturing, Their physical security and quality control are terrifyingly intense.
Oh, absolutely. To maintain their ISO 9001 certification, which is an international standard for absolute traceability and quality control, they have to monitor everything. So they installed state-of-the-art, incredibly high-resolution, wide-spectrum security cameras all over the exterior of the plant to monitor for the absolute slightest infractions or environmental anomalies.
And one day, those highly calibrated ISO-certified cameras captured something impossible. Osman states that the camera caught what looked like a miniature flying saucer about the size of a small room. It landed in the area, a set of stairs deployed, and out walked 2 or 3 miniature men, roughly 1 foot tall, wearing what looked like helmets. They walked around the perimeter for a few minutes, got back in the craft, and it took off.
But the crucial detail Osman notes here isn't the size of the craft, it's the composition. He says that on the high-res footage, the craft and the entities didn't look entirely solid. They looked like holograms. You could almost see through them, and they were glowing with a distinct golden light.
Okay, I have to play the skeptic again. Tiny hologram aliens in helmets sounds like a bad 1950s sci-fi movie. How does Osman rationalize this within his scientific framework?
His logic is actually deeply grounded in basic chemistry and biology. He argues that we need to abandon the idea of UFOs as nuts and bolts, physical spaceships traveling from distant planets.
Because of the atmosphere issue, right?
Yes. If a craft is physical, it is bound by the universe's base elements, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. For an extraterrestrial biological entity to fly across the galaxy, land on Earth, and walk out of a ship without wearing a massive, pressurized environmental suit, their home planet would have to perfectly match our exact nitrogen-oxygen atmospheric ratio. The statistical probability of that happening is infinitesimally low.
So if they aren't flying here from Alpha Centauri, where are they coming from?
Osman hypothesizes that they are not from another planet in our physical universe, but from an alternate dimension superimposed right here on Earth. They exist concurrently with us, but they operate at a much higher energy frequency.
Let me try another analogy here. It's like Wi-Fi networks in an apartment building.
Okay, let's hear it.
In your living room, you have your network, your neighbor has theirs, and the coffee shop downstairs has one. They all occupy the exact same physical space in your living room, but they exist on different radio frequencies, so they don't crash into each other. Your phone only sees the one you tune it to. Osman is saying these entities are just on a different Wi-Fi channel.
That's a brilliant way to frame it. To the naked biological human eye, if a security guard was standing in that parking lot, there was nothing there. The guard would have walked right through the craft without feeling a thing. But the high-res security camera, designed with sensors to capture the absolute widest possible spectrum of light for ISO certification, caught the subtle bleed over from that alternate frequency.
So we have an Apple camera catching DMT alphabets and a pharmaceutical security camera catching a holographic UFO. The provocation here is just staggering. Are these technologies acting as mechanical third eyes? Are we inadvertently, through the sheer pursuit of higher megapixel counts, building hardware that peers into the astral plane?
It is the ultimate unexpected collision of ancient mysticism and Silicon Valley engineering.
But if these cameras are genuinely starting to capture entities bleeding over from alternate frequencies, the obvious next question is, what exactly are these entities? Because Osman doesn't just theorize about them from video footage, he has direct, personal, visceral encounters with them.
Yes. Because of his 50 years of bioenergetic practice, Osman's internal sensors are essentially functioning like those high-res cameras. He naturally perceives these alternate frequencies. He accesses these perceptions most often when he enters the theta state.
Let's define the theta state for everyone really quickly. Think about that exact fleeting second right before you fall asleep, where you forget what room you're in, but you aren't quite dreaming yet. It's that liminal twilight space. That's theta.
Right. It's a very specific brainwave.
And Osman trains to hold his consciousness in that space. And what he encounters there ranges from the profoundly beautiful to the outright terrifying. Let's start with the terrifying. Osman addresses a phenomenon that plagues millions of people's sleep paralysis.
Conventional science categorizes sleep paralysis as a glitch in REM sleep. Your mind wakes up, but the chemical that paralyzes your body to keep you from acting out your dreams hasn't worn off yet. You feel a crushing weight on your chest, and you often hallucinate a dark figure in the room. Osman, however, categorizes this figure very differently. He calls it a vampire.
We have to clarify, he is incredibly specific that this is not a Hollywood vampire. We aren't talking about Dracula sneaking in to suck your blood from your neck. Osman describes seeing a dark, smoky, amorphous figure often wrapped in flowing robes with a truly horrific face.
He actually compared the face to the hockey mask from Friday the 13th, but pitch black, with a wide, gaping, open mouth. It hovers over him, sometimes trying to hold his feet down, sometimes trying to physically ride him.
And the purpose of this entity isn't to drink physical blood. Its purpose is to drain vital life force energy. Because these entities exist in a subtle dimension that does not have physical food sources, they sustain themselves by leaching bioenergy from living, physical beings who are in a vulnerable state, like sleep.
It is a purely parasitic, energetic relationship. They are essentially the mosquitoes of the astral plane.
That is a terrifying thought.
But not all of his encounters are so dramatic. He tells a surprisingly mundane, almost humorous story about an entity interacting with the physical world in his apartment in Turkey.
Yes, the shower door story. This is fantastic because it grounds the paranormal in daily life. So Osman lives alone in a small apartment. He is a self-described creature of habit. He even jokes that he has entrepreneurial OCD. One of his strict rules is that the sliding glass door of his shower must absolutely always remain open when he isn't using it to let the moisture escape and prevent mold.
Right, totally normal habit.
Mm.
So one day, he walks into his bathroom, reaches his arm out, because remember, he is physically blind, so he navigates by memory and touch, and his elbow suddenly smacks hard into the closed glass door.
He knows with 100% absolute certainty that he left it open. He lives entirely alone. And immediately upon realizing the physical door had been moved by an unseen force, he feels a sudden, piercing chill violently run down his spine.
He describes it as an unnatural cold that seemed to pass right through his physical body. He instantly identifies that presence as a jinn, which is a spirit in Islamic theology made of smokeless fire.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is how matter-of-factly he handles it.
Yeah, he doesn't freak out at all.
He doesn't call an exorcist. He doesn't panic.
No, it's not a horror movie to him. It's just an annoyance. It's like a roommate who keeps putting the milk back in the fridge empty. It just messed with his shower routine. That grounded, unbothered nature is what makes his accounts so believable. And it's not just low-level tricksters. He also mentions telepathic encounters with beings of immense scale.
He recounts an experience in the Theta state where he saw a figure in his mind's eye that was as tall as a two-story building. The figure had a very grave, serious look. No audible words were exchanged, but Osman states that he instantly knew, with an absolute, unquestionable internal knowing, that he was looking at the prophet Abraham.
He makes a point to emphasize that communication with these higher frequency beings is 99% telepathic. He says that using audible words and moving your mouth is a very primitive way of communication. In those realms, the pure concept or thought is just instantaneously transferred from their biofield to yours, which leads directly to one of his most vivid recent encounters involving what he calls the luminous boy.
Oh, this is a wild sequence. This happened recently while he was hovering in that theta state. He felt a presence and saw what he described as an incredibly beautiful guardian angel lying next to him. And she transmitted an urgent telepathic warning directly into his mind. She said, "Be careful. The small one is coming."
Suddenly, out of nowhere, he sees this entity approaching rapidly. It looks like a 6-year-old boy, but it is intensely luminous. It's glowing, as if there is a bright 100-watt globe inside of his chest, surrounded by a radiant golden halo of energy.
But the crucial distinction Osman makes is that this boy isn't naturally glowing. Because of Osman's training, he perceived the underlying reality. This entity was absolutely gorged on stolen energy.
Wow, so he was full of someone else's energy.
Exactly. He had just parasitically fed on someone else's biofield, and now he was zipping around, highly caffeinated on stolen life force, coming directly to siphon energy from Osman.
It's essentially astral wildlife management. Because Osman was warned by the guardian angel, he immediately engaged protective vibrational incantations, shielding his own biofield, and the parasitic entity disappeared. You really have to know what's out there and how to defend your garden.
You really do.
But the source material is very clear. You cannot judge these entities by their appearance. And this brings us to perhaps the most profound entity encounter Osman details, the black entity.
This is a masterclass in energetic discernment. Osman describes seeing an entity that was completely, totally black. It had charcoal black skin, long flowing black hair, and was dressed in entirely black clothes. It manifested looking like a 13 or 14-year-old girl just standing there staring directly at him.
He explicitly admits that if a normal person woke up and saw this pitch black figure standing at the foot of their bed, they would absolutely lose their minds. I mean, it sounds exactly like the terrifying ghost girl from the movie The Ring.
Visually, yes. But energetically, Osman felt absolutely zero fear. The entity was not transmitting any negative, parasitic, or aggressive energy. Instead, emanating from this terrifying figure, he felt profound, overwhelming peace.
He was completely fascinated trying to figure out what this paradox was, so he turned to research, utilizing AI to search through texts, and going back to Arthur Avalon's other major book, Shakti and Shakta, and he finds a perfect historical and energetic match.
He links this specific entity to a deity from Hindu iconography known as Ratri, or sometimes Chamundi. In the ancient texts, this figure is considered an emanation of Kali, the fierce, uncompromising goddess associated with time, blackness, and destruction.
But destruction gets a bad rap in the West. In this context, she isn't destroying people, she is the destruction of obstacles. Ratri is a spirit of the night, and in many parts of India, she is considered highly auspicious. She is invoked to clear the path of negative forces.
And it is the specific iconography of this deity that sparks what I think is the most brilliant, illuminating analogy in this entire deep dive. The ancient texts dictate that this fierce, supreme, obstacle-clearing deity rides an animal. But she doesn't ride a majestic lion or a fierce tiger. She rides a donkey.
Which seems completely absurd. Why would a supreme spiritual force ride a stubborn, slow mule?
Well, Osman unpacks this symbolism brilliantly by contrasting it with the horse. Let's look at the horse first. A horse represents speed, power, and rapid progress. But riding a horse hard is physically exhausting. It depletes your energy rapidly, and most importantly, it is highly dangerous.
He specifically references Christopher Reeve, the actor who famously played Superman, an incredibly strong, vital man who tragically broke his neck and was paralyzed after falling from a horse. Riding a fast horse is a high-risk endeavor. One misstep, and you are permanently broken.
Now, compare that risk profile to a donkey. A donkey is notoriously slow, but it is incredibly steady. It is sure-footed on treacherous mountain paths where a horse would panic and fall. It is safe. You very rarely hear of someone suffering a catastrophic, life-altering spinal injury from falling off a slow-moving donkey.
And beyond safety, because the donkey is slow, it forces you to remain present. You can actually enjoy the scenery. You can stop and talk to the people you pass along the way. If you are galloping at top speed on a thoroughbred, you blow right past everyone and everything in a blur. On a donkey, you stay intimately connected to the physical world around you.
Osman takes this ancient iconography and applies it as a modern philosophical framework. In business, for example, ventures that are built too fast, the easy-come, easy-go startups that burn through cash often collapse just as quickly. True, resilient, lasting value is built thoroughly, methodically, and safely over time. It's the donkey approach.
But the real payload of this analogy is how he applies it directly to spiritual awakening. The donkey perfectly sets up Osman's profound critique of modern psychonaut culture. He asks a critical question. Why take the highly dangerous, incredibly fast horse of psychedelics when you can take the reliable, steady, safe donkey of natural, structured yoga?
This is a crucial pivot in his teachings. Osman draws a hard, uncompromising line here. He looks at the experiments of people like Danny Gala, using intravenous DMT to artificially blast open the doors of perception, and contrasts it with his own methodical biofield optimization.
Osman is unequivocal about his own habits. He states he has never used psychedelics. He doesn't drink alcohol. He doesn't even smoke. He looks at the modern, frantic desperation to force entry into other dimensions and dismissively calls it chemical VR. He's genuinely asking, what is the point of forcing your way in? Are these entities going to give you the winning lottery numbers?
Now, to be fair, he does acknowledge that psychedelics have had a tangible influence on human culture. He mentions Steve Jobs, who very famously credited taking LSD with helping him conceptualize the sleek, user-friendly, futuristic designs of early Apple products. Osman admits there is a creative yield to these chemical VR experiences.
But he warns, in the strongest possible terms, about the severe biological and psychological cost of repeated forced entry. He points out that people who abuse these powerful substances begin to lose control of their perceptual filters.
That's where it gets really dangerous.
They start seeing entities in their normal waking life. He mentions people who literally see half lizard, half frog beings standing right next to them while they were just trying to buy groceries or go about their day.
The mechanism here is what's dangerous. When you force the biofield open with massive chemical interventions, you haven't done the slow, methodical work of building the neurological or energetic infrastructure required to safely handle that high frequency. The boundaries between dimensions begin to bleed together uncontrollably. You are riding the fast horse, and the risk of breaking your neck, psychologically speaking, inducing psychosis, is incredibly high.
And beyond the sheer danger, Osman argues that trying to escape this reality completely misses the point of being physical in the first place. He illustrates this with a story from the autobiography of a highly respected mystic named Sri M, who documented his extensive out-of-body experiences in the
Oh,
Himalayas.
this is a great story.
Sri M describes successfully floating out of his physical body. In that astral state, he can see the room perfectly. He can even smell the incense burning, but he cannot touch anything.
Shri M notes that if he tries to pick up a physical spoon off the table, his astral hand just passes completely through it as if it were empty space.
Osman uses this to make a profound philosophical point. He says, look, we incarnated into this specific dimension to experience the density of the physical world. We were given 5 senses for a reason. We are currently the only beings that can truly experience this density.
Right, AI certainly can't do it.
Exactly. AI, for all its processing power, cannot taste a hot meal. AI cannot smell the rain on pavement. AI cannot feel the texture of a loved one's hand or genuinely feel the complex physical ache of grief or joy.
To be human is a rare privilege of physical density. If you spend your entire life desperately using chemicals to eject your consciousness into the astral plane, you are fundamentally wasting the gift of the physical avatar you were given.
And this philosophy culminates in what I think is the ultimate counterintuitive guru move. When Osman uses his structured breathwork to raise his kundalini energy up his spine, he very deliberately hits the brakes. He stops the energy at the 7th chakra, the crown of the head.
To understand why that's shocking, you have to look at most esoteric traditions. Usually, the ultimate stated goal of these practices is to push the energy forcefully beyond the 7th chakra, launching consciousness out into the cosmos to achieve total ego death. The goal is to completely dissolve the individual identity, the I, and merge seamlessly into the universal consciousness.
But Osman explicitly refuses to do that. He says if you push past the 7th chakra, you lose the I, you lose the me. And he refuses to lose that identity.
I love this because it's like he's saying, I logged into this specific dimension to play the game. Why on earth would I want to delete my avatar and wipe my save file while the console is still on?
Right, why check out early?
He wants to retain his distinct sense of self so he can continue to interact with and help people in this physical world.
It is a deeply grounded, intensely pragmatic approach to mysticism. He is not trying to escape reality. He is trying to master his interface with it. And this highly practical, fiercely protective stance maps perfectly onto his surprising views regarding real-world protection and modern medicine. Oh man, if you thought the Blind Yogi was going to tell you to just sit cross-legged on a cloud, chant Om, and send good vibes while the world burns around you, you are in for a massive shock. We have to talk about his concept of sovereignty, and to do that, we have to talk about the .357 Magnum.
Yes, Osman operates from a non-negotiable core principle of individual sovereignty. Whether he is dealing with a parasitic astral entity trying to drain his bioenergy while he sleeps, or a physical earthly threat breaking into his home, his philosophy is exactly the same. Fiercely claim and protect your space. In the astral, he uses incantations and sheer willpower to assert, "Nothing will touch me."
But he doesn't just rely on spiritual incantations for physical safety in the real world. Osman is originally from South Africa, a country he notes has a very strong, practical gun culture similar to the United States. He is a deeply practical man who loves target shooting as a sport. But when it comes to the grave reality of self-defense, his philosophy mirrors his spiritual teachings perfectly.
He brings up Clint Eastwood's famous character, Dirty Harry, and his iconic .44 Magnum. It's a massive, incredibly powerful gun. But Osman argues that for practical, everyday, reliable self-defense, the .357 Magnum revolver is the superior tool.
And his reasoning is brilliant. He says the .357 is lighter to carry, the recoil is manageable so that a smaller person, like his wife or daughter, could use it effectively in a life or death emergency. And you can practice at the range with cheaper .38 special rounds. But the real philosophical lesson is in the ballistics of the bullet itself.
Exactly. He contrasts the heavy .357 revolver round with a modern 9mm semi-automatic pistol. He points out a grim reality of ballistics. You could empty a 16-round magazine of 9mm ammunition into an assailant, and because the bullets are smaller and travel so incredibly fast, they might pass cleanly right through the target without immediately stopping the threat. The assailant, hopped up on adrenaline, might not even realize they've been fatally shot until it's too late, allowing them to still cause harm.
But the .357 Magnum. A revolver only holds 6 bullets. It's an older, slower technology. But it is an absolute one-stop solution. One round from a .357 is designed to definitively stop an assailant in their tracks. It expands and transfers 100% of its massive kinetic energy directly into the target.
The metaphor here is undeniable. Why is a master yogi analyzing ballistic stopping power? Because it is the perfect physical manifestation of his spiritual philosophy. He values absolute efficiency, definitiveness, and focused energy.
It's all about focus.
Exactly. Whether he is systematically cleansing a blocked chakra, banishing an energetic jinn from his apartment, or protecting his physical family from a violent intruder, he refuses to waste 16 rounds of scattered, panicked energy. He wants one definitive, calculated action that entirely secures his sovereignty.
It is absolute, unapologetic practicality. And he brings this exact same fierce pragmatism to the topic of modern healthcare. This is a crucial point in the source material, so consider this a direct medical disclaimer from Osman himself. He vehemently, repeatedly insists that his yoga and bioenergy healing protocols are not replacements for conventional allopathic Western medicine.
Which is incredibly rare. You have a master bioenergy healer who confidently charges millions of dollars for critical care, yet he explicitly tells his global audience, if you have a severe medical condition, you must go to a medical doctor. He views the two systems, ancient biooptimization and modern chemical medicine, as synergistic, not mutually exclusive.
And he backs this up with hard data. He cites the work of Dr. Don Musselman, a highly respected specialist oncologist from the Mayo Clinic, whose work he heard featured on the Mel Robbins podcast. Dr. Musselman is renowned for having incredibly high, statistically anomalous success rates in treating severe cancer.
Right, she's a powerhouse in that field.
And she achieves this by combining conventional allopathic treatments like chemotherapy and radiation with natural, holistic interventions.
She focuses heavily on optimizing the patient's baseline biology. Strict diet, necessary sunlight exposure, aggressive stress reduction, and deep nutritional support. And Osman notes the exact statistics she shared. Combining these natural biofield optimizing treatments with conventional allopathic medicine increases the patient's chance of recovery by 35%, all the way up to 450%.
A 450% increase in survival, that is a staggering, reality-altering multiplier.
And Osman uses his framework to explain the biological mechanism behind why this synergy works so powerfully. When you are deeply stressed, fearful, and depleted by illness, your body is rapidly draining its cellular energy, specifically the ATP cells, which are the fundamental energy currency of your biology. Your immune system becomes entirely compromised.
So you have nothing left to fight with.
Exactly. When doctors introduce incredibly harsh allopathic medicines like chemotherapy into that depleted environment, the body just struggles to process the poison.
But if you implement natural spirituality, if you use the mathematical Tirumandaram breathwork and practice energetic mindfulness, you force the nervous system into that parasympathetic ida-dominant state. You drastically reduce the drain on your ATT cells. You organically supercharge the immune field.
You are basically ensuring that the patient's biological battery is fully charged. When the body is held in this optimized, calm, energy-rich state, the harsh chemical medicines are suddenly able to actually do their job effectively. They aren't fighting a brutal war on two fronts against the disease and the body's own systemic stress.
Osman has a fantastic phrase for this philosophy. He says, "The winning horse wins by a nose." When you are literally fighting for your life against a terminal illness, you don't need a single mythical magic bullet that does 100% of the work. You need to give your body every single microadvantage possible.
All those little edges add up.
They do. A 1% increase in ATP cellular energy, a 2% decrease in toxic cortisol levels, a 5% boost in immune function from breathwork. Those tiny fractions stack up, they compound, and they are the exact difference between the horse that finishes second and the horse that takes the jackpot.
It's a beautifully integrated, deeply logical worldview. He isn't rejecting modern science or modern medicine. He is elevating them by providing the robust, energetic foundation they require to succeed at their highest potential.
And that profound duality, the ancient mystic who relies on Mayo Clinic statistics and .357 ballistics, really defines Osman, the blind yogi. Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. What an absolute journey this source material has been.
We have covered an immense amount of ground. I mean, we started by dissecting the intricate biology of the 114 chakras and the Ida and Pingala nadis, realizing that the ancient subtle biofield maps perfectly onto the physical Western nervous system.
We looked at the startling, paradigm-shifting intersection of ancient mysticism and modern tech, The fact that high-res ISO 9001 security cameras and Apple Vision Pro lenses are beginning to capture objective visual evidence of DMT alphabets and holographic interdimensional craft.
We explored the taxonomy of astral entities, from the parasitic sleep paralysis vampires draining bioenergy, to the luminous boy gorged on stolen life force, to the protective, fierce nature of the black entity Raytree.
We learned the absolute wisdom of riding the reliable, slow donkey of natural yoga instead of taking the dangerous, neck-breaking fast horse of psychedelics. We learned why you should deliberately stop the kundalini at the seventh chakra, keeping your ego intact so you can actually enjoy the physical density of the five senses.
And finally, we grounded all of that esoteric knowledge in the fierce practicality of individual sovereignty, the definitive stopping power of a .357 Magnum, and the statistical 450% synergy of combining bioenergy optimization with conventional allopathic medicine.
It all circles back perfectly to Osman's core mission and that foundational quote we started with. He has spent 50 years testing this global synthesis, and he is simplifying it, using those specific Tirumandram breathwork ratios so that you can self-initiate from home. He wants you to take back complete control of your own biofield entirely for free, without the gatekeeping of gurus or the premium paywalls of modern wellness retreats.
He is offering a structured, mathematically precise path to reclaiming your internal sensitivity and fortifying both your biological and energetic defenses.
But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, a thought that ties this entire sprawling inquiry together. Think back to our opening metaphor, the broken X-ray machine, the murky waters of the invisible world. Osman operates on the fundamental premise that what we call spiritual is not magic. It is just a physics we haven't fully mapped yet.
A physics of the subtle.
Exactly. But consider the trajectory of our consumer technology. If Apple cameras are genuinely beginning to film DMT alphabets on walls and security feeds are catching the holographic frequencies of the astral plane, and if the physics of quantum entanglement is slowly providing a mechanical, scientifically viable framework for remote bioenergy healing, what happens to religion, to spirituality, and to human society on the day when the soul finally becomes a measurable, undeniable scientific metric?
What happens when the X-ray machine finally gets the firmware update required to see the 1 in 14 chakras?
Exactly. If the invisible inevitably becomes visible, how will that change the way you live tomorrow?